Chris, thanks as always. Chris, President Trump now denies having said a particular vulgarity that we can't repeat on broadcast television. Senator Dick Durbin insists that he did. So who do they believe in Washington, and does it really matter?
Well, I got to say, everybody in Washington believes the president said it. It was floating out there all yesterday afternoon, all last night. It was all over cable news. The White House did not deny it. One assumes, just use your common sense, if Dick Durbin, the one Democrat in the room, had just made this up after the meeting, the White House would have come down with the wrath of God yesterday. They didn't do anything until the president's tweet this morning, so it seems very, very unlikely, and in fact incredible, that this would have floated out there if it was a false accusation. Now, the political impact, in terms of just the mood music, the tone, there are a lot of people who are shocked by what this president has done, what he did as a candidate. They're going to continue to be shocked. There are a lot of people who don't care, don't think that it really matters, like his plain spokenness, and I suspect they're not going to be dissuaded either. The one real area you ask, could it matter, is that this was going to be a very tough bargain anyway to get a deal on immigration. Protection for the so-called Dreamers, the DACA fix in return for tougher border enforcement. There were a lot of Democrats who didn't want to make that deal with this president. My guess is there are even more Democrats who are even stronger in not wanting to make a deal now with the president.
Well, Chris, there was a fascinating moment during that televised meeting earlier this week when Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, the Democrat, said to the president, look, we all agree on DACA, so why don't we do that separately and then we can agree to work on immigration reform. And he said, great idea, until Republicans objected. So do you think there's going to be a deal potentially without a wall or not?
No, there won't be a deal without a wall. The president has made it very clear. When he said he was okay with it, I actually think he's gotten a bum rap on that. People use shorthand in Washington. When you talk about a DACA deal, and yes, she talked about a clean bill. I'm not sure he fully understood that. What everybody agrees is that a DACA deal means that in return for protection for the Dreamers, there's going to be tougher border enforcement, including the president's demand for a wall. In case there was any confusion about that, he was asked at a news conference, I guess it was on Wednesday, when he was after his meeting with the Norwegian prime minister, and he said, no, a DACA deal has to include a wall. And in fact, the deal that he was offered in that controversial meeting in the Oval Office where he said this expletive deleted, Democrats have acknowledged that and were willing to give him $1.5 billion down payment on a wall. But there were other parts of the deal that the president couldn't accept.
And of course, there seems to be no mention anymore at all of having Mexico pay for the wall, right?
Well, no, that's not quite true, because the president did an interview yesterday with the Wall Street Journal, and he was asked about that. And he said, look, we're going to negotiate a new deal with NAFTA, and if we get the deal, there's going to be money in that would, have normally gone to the Mexicans, and we're going to take that, and, that'll in effect be Mexico paying for the wall. So the president seems to really want to be able to declare victory, whether it's a direct payment for the wall or whether it's some part of a NAFTA renegotiation.
Okay, we'll see what happens. The House voted this week, Chris, to extend the part of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that allows warrantless wiretapping of foreigners after the president seemed to go both ways on Twitter. Do you think there was some confusion there or not?
Well, the only person who doesn't seem to think there was some confusion was Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House spokeswoman, who said, well, if you're confused, then it's your problem, not the president's. No, it was a complete 180 in a period of less than 2 hours. The president apparently was watching Fox and Friends, his favorite morning show, and Judge Andrew Napolitano, one of our legal experts, was saying why he doesn't like Section 702 of the FISA Act. There's a question about privacy for Americans in this. And the president seemed to come out against it. And then there was a very fevered hour and a half where Speaker Ryan got him on the phone. His chief of staff, John Kelly, talked to him, and they all were basically saying, we've been for this bill for, about 6 months. You can't now suddenly pull the rug out from under. They raced up to Capitol Hill. They cleaned it up. The House passed it. My guess is it's going to pass in the Senate this week. It reminds me of the famous statement during the 2004 campaign by John Kerry when he said he was for the bill before he was against it.
Right. Now, on the Iran deal, just a quick question on that score. It's interesting that the Republicans inserted a provision that forced President Obama to come back and justify the deal every few months. And now President Trump is put in that position with a deal that he claims not to like at all.
He hates that. He absolutely hates having to certify it. The interesting thing is he, in October, said that they are not complying with the deal, but he didn't pull us out of the deal because it doesn't matter what the president certifies. The key is, are they going to put the sanctions that were lifted, the economic sanctions that were lifted as part of the deal, are they going to be put back on Iran or not? They still haven't been put back on. The president expected to say today that he's not going to demand that the sanctions be put back in, that he's going to stay in the deal, but 120 days or something for them to figure it out. The fact is that most members of Congress, and certainly all of our European allies that were party to this deal, do not want to blow it up, feel that it is restraining Iran from pursuing its nuclear program. So we would really be out there by ourselves in the world were we to drop out of the deal. Not much interest in that. I don't think the president's national security team wants him to do it. And so as much as he hates it and as much as he continues to say it's a bad deal, he's going to stay with it, I think, for another 3 or 4 months.
All right. Busy times. What do you have coming up on Fox News Sunday this weekend, Chris?
Well, the big story is immigration, both the explosive comments that the president made and the whole question of is there going to be a deal and will there be a deal in time to keep the government funded next week. We're going to have an interview with the new Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, who can talk about that. She was in that fateful meeting in the Oval Office this week. And then we'll talk to the Attorney General of California, Xavier Becerra, former Democratic leader in Congress, and he was one of the people behind that lawsuit that led a federal judge to suspend the ending of the DACA rollback, to basically say the Dreamers are protected and are not going to be deported from the country. So we'll talk to him about where all of this stands. And as the Attorney General of California, he can give us a better sense outside the Beltway of where this really stands in terms of the lives of those 800,000 Dreamers.
A lot at stake, and we'll be watching, as always. Chris, thanks.
You bet. Thank you, Russ.